welcome to our channel. This is OT Mom Jeza, and for today's video, it is all about living with multiple congenital anomalies, or basically Logan's birth story and journey. You will know what are the 3 congenital anomalies or birth defects that Logan has. Is it syndromic or is it not? And what I did as an OT mom that Logan was able to achieve most of his milestones so far. The goal of this video is to raise awareness about children with special needs or children with multiple congenital anomalies, and for the general population to empathize, sympathize, and also support these children who needs our help and support and love, of course. So stay tuned, it's quite long, but hopefully you will finish this video. Going back, it was quite a normal pregnancy at the beginning, where I used, of course, pregnancy test and giving the news to my husband. I will show the video here. So we had our first few prenatal checkups. I had severe morning sickness, and it was all normal. And the course of my normal pregnancy drastically changed after we asked our OB to determine the gender of our child for our gender reveal just in time for my birthday. So it was almost my birthday when we had our prenatal pelvic ultrasound. When I was 18 weeks pregnant, when the excitement faded of knowing the gender of my child, okay, so from that supposed gender reveal, another revelation was given by our OB. So our OB told us that my child has right cleft lip but intact palate, and I was in a cage with full of plastic cover inside the ultrasound room, and I was crying a lot. That eventually I hyperventilated because my hands were starting to freeze, and my husband was just there staring and not really emotional. But then I can't understand myself because I am a first-time mom. Then why did it happen to me that my child has a congenital defect? And it was really hard. I remember crying a lot during walking towards the car, in the mall. So going back, we went to the mall to get some comfort. Then my husband bought me milk tea. That's the only picture that we took after getting the news. And it was really hard, but eventually, slowly, I was able to accept what my child has. And my OB also asked me about any family history that may have caused this defect. I shared to her that my brother has a missing uvula or kanang bell on his oral structure, And also the side of my husband has a cousin who has bilateral cleft lip and palate. So basically maybe it's a genetic case. And just so you know that cleft is one of the most common congenital anomaly amongst children. Okay, meaning congenital, it happened at birth or even before birth. Then we were already okay, so we accepted it. We had our usual prenatal checkup. Since it's pandemic, we only had prenatal checkup every 2 months. And then another congenital anomaly scan was performed by our OB just to check. And another bad news again, it's not just one congenital defect that my child has. On our 31st week ultrasound, my OB saw, that's how great my OB is, my OB saw another congenital defect. She named it severe bilateral ventriculomegaly, meaning the ventricles of my child, which are some 2 parts of the brain, are bigger than the usual size of that of a baby. So ventriculomegaly, and it's severe. And she told us that my child has hydrocephalus. So again, but this time on my 31st ultrasound, my husband was absent because of work. So I drove to the doctor alone and got the most sad news alone with my OB, and I was crying again in the ultrasound bed. And then I drove to my car again crying, and I remember the guard in the parking lot was asking me for a parking fee. He was shocked that I was crying. I was very red, and he did not bother to get my parking ticket anymore because he was shocked because I was crying. And I went there to our condo and shared the news to my husband. I was crying while video calling my husband. He still has a hearing, and then when he saw me crying so much during our video call, he told me nga, don't tell me yet, I will go there. Then he arrived at our condo, and I told him our child has hydrocephalus, and my husband was wailing at our room, wailing, like shouting, like crying. And it's my first time to see him that way. During the announcement of the cleft, my husband was really okay. He reassured me to stop crying because it is repairable. But this time the hydrocephalus was so hard for him and also us. And we were basically living on our own with my husband in the city. Then we decided to just be home for some support system from the family after hearing that sad news. I can't believe I'm crying while sharing this. Again. Okay. So to continue, so we were told by our OB also that we will monitor the head circumference of our child just to see if we can deliver it normally, or if needed that the child's head will grow continually, because as we know, if hydrocephalus, there's like a blockage. Hydrocephalus is the abnormal build-up of fluid inside the brain that basically the cerebrospinal fluid is accumulated in the area that makes the head expand. That's why we were advised by our OB to have monitoring of his head circumference, or how big his head will be, every 2 weeks, and eventually every week as I reach my full term. Then at 34 weeks, we had a false alarm contraction because I had acute gastroenteritis and some dehydration. I was admitted to the emergency room for almost a day. I don't know what caused it, maybe stress. I'm so glad, we're so thankful that I am not yet in labor, so there is a chance that my baby will reach full term. On November 4, it was our scheduled prenatal checkup, and my OB noticed another thing. So she told us that my amniotic fluid is already low, and then I reported to her that my panty liner would be soaked every day, that it will penetrate to my panty, and it was really unusual for me. So when I told her that, plus what she saw on the ultrasound, that my amniotic fluid is already low, she had me go to the ER and to do some confirmation. And then yes, I am already leaking. There is premature rupture of the membrane or lining down there. So that's November 4. So the due date of my baby is still December 8. So basically, Logan is premature and really not in time. And the doctor advised us to induce my labor to prevent any complication or infection that may happen because of the premature rupture of my membrane that will cause the bacteria or any infection that may go inside the baby and affect him at that time. So Logan is still 36 weeks by then, and 37 weeks is the full term. So we're still 1 week away to being full term, but then I was induced to labor to make sure that the baby is okay, and also me, result to any consequences on my health also, because it might poison me down. It was quite hard because they have to induce my labor and to make it fast, because the baby or me might be poisoned if we make it longer. And just had the normal delivery and all, but then there's another revelation. So as we recall, the first defect was cleft lip, intact palate. Second is severe bilateral ventriculomegaly or hydrocephalus, and at birth another congenital defect was noted, and it is the cleft palate. So it was not really obvious during the prenatal scans or pelvic scans or congenital anomaly scans before, because it was, I think it is not possible to see if it is intact or not, and we can't be sure by then. That's why the baby needs to be delivered first before it will be confirmed that the kid has cleft palate as well, aside from the cleft lip. So there goes my baby's congenital anomalies. So with that, given that my child has multiple congenital anomalies, we already had a lot of doctors, first with my OB, then to my pediatrician, then to my pediatric neurologist, then to a geneticist, then to a dentist, neonatologist, and what else? A plastic surgeon was already standby or was already called out. And because my child has multiple congenital anomalies, it was suspected to be a syndrome. So the worst part, after giving birth, where I am still very tired. I'm still very immobile because of the stitches down there, which reached to my anus. Oh no! And because of that, the doctors have concluded that maybe this is syndromic. And they suspected Patau syndrome, which really made us devastated again because the survival rate of Patau syndrome is very low. And again, another impression of the doctors is holoprosencephaly, which is again has very low chances of living or have very low survival rate. And those two diagnoses or two impressions of the doctor really made us cry every night, again and again and again.
And the thing that really broke me down into tears while wearing those hot PPEs inside the NICU was when geneticist told me that I must prepare that anytime soon that my son will be gone and I have to baptize him as soon as possible.
In the hospital, I got discharged one day after giving birth. So we need to visit the hospital or my baby every day. So I go to the NICU every single day to give breast milk and also give time for my baby. After a week in the NICU, our pediatric neurologist told us to have an cranial ultrasound to check what's really wrong with my child's head. Why does he have ventriculomegaly? And turned out that my child does not have a hydrocephalus as what was initially diagnosed, but then there was ventriculomegaly because there is absent corpus callosum. So that's an integral part of the brain, which is basically at the middle, which connects the right and the left hemisphere of the brain. Then my child doesn't have that. So it is called the agenesis of corpus callosum. So the cranial ultrasound gave us a relief, though it's still bad news, but then at least we have a diagnosis. So that's the reason why the hydrocephalus diagnosis was eliminated, and then we were quite relieved because we already know or partly know what's the diagnosis of my child, which is cleft lip and palate, and then with the agenesis of corpus callosum. To summarize, though we are not yet sure if Logan's condition is a syndrome because the test is not available here in the Philippines, but at least for now, doctors concluded that maybe Logan has a midline defect. Midline defect because primarily because of the agenesis of the corpus callosum or the missing corpus callosum, and also the midline defect, which is the cleft lip and palate. So basically these three anomalies or birth defects are all midline, so they might be related to each other. It was really hard with all the doctor's appointments, but then we persisted, all because of our love for our child Logan. And I think it is all worth it. See how he is right now. He is doing very well, very good, and really healthy and silly. Imagine having to take care of a normal child is already very tiring. Imagine how it is more tiresome for children with special needs, and especially to my child who is congenital anomalies. As a realization, we really need to be kind, understanding, and compassionate to other parents, whether they have a normal child or have special needs in children. So it's very important to be kind, you know. It really helps. Also the support system that we got from our family, friends, and also one factor that really helped me get through this journey was the help of my Facebook support groups namely the Cleft Mom support, the Agenesis of Corpus Callosum support group, Cleft support group Philippines. So I had all these in my news feed, and I can read a lot of stories that was similar, worse, or better than Logan, but then it really comforts me every time. And of course, our God Almighty, who has always been there to comfort us. Here are the snippets of what we typically do in a day and what OT activities that I gave Logan to help him achieve his milestones.
Where does it go? Where does it go? I've got a jar, so where does it go? Are your toys?
That's the end of the video. I'm so glad that you reached this far. With all that I did for my child and what I am currently doing for him, at the end of the day, you do you, mommy.